Hello everyone, how are you feeling? How has this eclipse and new moon portal been for you? I mean, this has probably been one of the most powerful kind of astrological timing or events that I've experienced in a long time. I mean, I spent all of last night and a large part of today just feeling like I wanted to cry. Like I just felt so in touch and so sensitive with my emotional body, with all the feelings that were being channeled through my emotional body. And I could feel so many tears that were coming, so many tears that wanted to be shed that I actually felt in many ways I had been holding on to for a very long time. Things within me that maybe didn't have permission, didn't have the space. I don't know what it was, but it's like this beautiful Cancer new moon along with this eclipse just suddenly came through my system, came through my entire being and just let so many things go, so many parts of my being that just no longer served me. And really, it gave me this beautiful opportunity to, I don't know, to feel myself so clearly and so directly, more so than I ever have in a very long time. And it was an ecstatic experience. Well, maybe that's not true. It was completely painful and felt like it was ripping me to the very core of who I was. But those feelings, sometimes when we're in that depth of pain or sorrow or sadness, when those tears are really starting to flow, even though you want to resist it, even though you just want to shut it off, you want to completely disconnect and disassociate with those tender, vulnerable feelings, it's beautiful. It gives you this beautiful opportunity to feel, and just allowing yourself to feel that beauty, to feel that tenderness, to feel that sensitivity becomes ecstatic. It becomes a revelation on itself. It becomes an opportunity for you to feel, to see, and to love yourself like never before. And so as I would sit, and I sat with it all last night to the very early hours of this morning, and for a large part of today, just getting to feel myself and getting to feel, what do I actually want? It felt like this beautiful dark moon was shining its beautiful dark light on me, showing me like, what do I actually want in life? What am I calling in? Where do I see myself going, and how do I want to get there? And one of the things that came through last night during this kind of new moon ceremony that I was having was I was getting to see all the ways that my energy is flowing, all the kind of places that my energy is going, and do those places actually serve me? Do those places really lift me up to the places that I want to go? And one of the big areas that I saw come through last night, that was delivered into me, that was mainly just highlighted, was sexuality, was sexual energy, and the way that I have a relationship to sex. And I'm a Scorpio, and my sacral center for my entire life has been my guiding force. It has been something that has brought me some of the most beautiful experience, the most ecstatic, orgasmic experiences of my life. My sacral and my sexuality has transmuted and held me so much and brought me experiences that I never thought I could possibly have before. And on the other side of that coin, sex and sexuality has also been a huge mechanism of sabotage in my life. And it's also, you could say, maybe steered me off the path, or created a lot of disharmony in my own life, in my relationships, in my connection to spirit. So it's been this powerful force, and this powerful force of change in my life, both in, you could say, positive and really good ways, but also ways that maybe were not in true alignment. Not to say that anything was a mistake or that I regret anything that occurred in my life, but were these experiences that were somehow related to sex really leading me to who I want to be? And were they really leading me to what my higher self wanted for me? And so last night I was clearly shown that right now, as much as I love sex, and it's incredibly difficult for me to feel like I want to give up sex, what it was showing me is that it would be a really beautiful opportunity for me to commit to a time away from sex, to commit to a time away from sexuality as I currently know it, and I currently use it, and I currently flow with it, to create a whole new dynamic and a whole new relationship to sexuality and sexual energy, the ways that I channel and allow sexual energy through my being, and the ways that I interact with other people through these sexual type of energies and these sensual type of energies, and what can happen and what can be transmuted and what can be seen if I go through this period of celibacy. It was shown to me really clearly that something beautiful can come up, and who knows, exactly where it's leading. And in full transparency and honesty, I was in full resistance to this idea all day long. I had this download, I had this, inspiration to have this, 6 months of celibacy, but also everything in my entire being said no. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're giving up so many beautiful opportunities, experiences, and I could see all the parts of myself that were in contraction and fear, largely in my ego, about not wanting to do this. And that was one of the big reasons why I want to come on and do this live video, because oh no, once I put it out there into the world, there's no going back. I'm saying and sharing this with all of you, really as a way to hold myself accountable, because once it's out there, you can't take it back. So yeah, I spent a lot of today just in resistance to it. I spent a lot of today in resistance to the idea of committing to celibacy. One, because I've never done this before. I've never actually committed to a time of voluntary celibacy. And on top of that, not only do I feel like I want to do it 6 months of celibacy, but it's also going to be 6 months of non-ejaculation practice. So like the two things that I love most in life, which I feel like is sex and orgasmic energy, through ejaculation, I'm literally just like taking it away that then I'll have to really dive more deeply into what it means to me. And what I love about this new moon, what I feel like it's been doing for me, is it's not only helped me clarify maybe what I want and what I'm moving toward, but it's really helping me like systematically see what I want to cleanse out of my life, or maybe what I want to create right relationship and greater levels of alignment with. And sexuality just kept coming up there, and yeah, really, really helping me see maybe some of the ways that sexuality has been a distraction, or maybe a lot of the ways that sexuality has been used as, you could say a distraction away from what I really should be working on. And one of the big issues that I've been committing myself to the past year or so is diving into, what's known as the mother wound. And so much of who we are, and I can only speak really for men, but so much of who we are in the masculine as men, directly comes from our relationship to our parents, specifically our relationship to our mother. And all the dynamics that go into play of how we were raised and what type of dynamics took place in our relationship with our mother really come into our field and stay with us and condition the way we actually interact with life, and more specifically interact with our partners, our relationships, and the women in our life. And so with this last year, I've had the chance to really start diving in and seeing, what is the mother wound in my life? What are these kind of deeper patterns and these templates that were installed in me as a child, as I was growing up, and how can I kind of get into them and start to shift them and start to transmute them? And in this last year, so many elements of my specific mother wound, because mother wounds can be different for everyone, has their own kind of unique mother wound, especially men have different dynamics of the mother wound. But for me, some of the key pillars of my mother wound related directly to worthiness of love. How is our relationship to feeling worthy of love in our life and in our relationships, but also getting tied into honesty and integrity, especially in communication with partners and in relationship. And then on top of that, it's just like, how can I start to shift these dynamics? How can I start to create a whole new relationship, to these places of how I felt like this wound has taken place, and it gets locked into our system. It gets so locked into who we are that it becomes difficult to shift. And why I'm really excited to step into this period of celibacy, why I'm really excited to step into, this period of creating a new relationship with sex, is because even though I'd become aware in this last year of, worthiness of love, honesty of communication, and also the third part of my mother wound, which was really trusting the feminine, because sexuality was such a prominent factor in my life, the more that I would engage with the feminine, especially in sexual or intimate or romantic ways, it's almost like I was distracting myself so I didn't have to work on it. And on top of that, we all kind of relate, whether it's men, who are listening to this, or maybe women who are listening to this, and they can think back about their partners, you know, until we kind of heal the mother wound when we're in relationships, these things keep expressing themselves in relationships. These things keep coming up in relationships, really because they're like, hey, you have this wound, you have to clear it, you have to heal it, you have to transmute it. And the more that I felt like I was engaging, with the feminine, especially through sexuality or sensuality or intimacy, really I felt like distracting me from working on it, and almost kind of like pushing it down, or bearing it down, or allowing me to connect with the feminine in ways that felt really pleasurable and really enjoyable to me, i.e. sex, and then not necessarily facing the parts of me that needed to work things out and needed to heal it. So this is a big part of why I feel like these 6 months of celibacy are going to be really powerful and also really difficult for me, is because suddenly when you take out a lot of these distracting factors, or areas of your life that create a lot of pleasure, and a lot of growth and a lot of amazing experiences, when you kind of like remove yourself from those avenues, what's left is the raw, what's left is the authentic, what's left is, the things that we actually then have to deal with when we don't have these distractions in our life. So what I'm excited about is first is to dive into the idea of worthiness of love, and how this is related around sexuality for me is I found that as I would create relationships with the feminine, with women in my life, if I felt like I was being, you could say, sexually desired by women, I would feel worthy of their love. And so it would create these interesting components of like, how was I getting these type of worthiness and worthy energy of love, and how that would relate to sexuality. And then it would create this like self-fulfilling prophecy that I felt like the more that I would be desired, and especially that I would be desired sexually, the more I would feel worthy of their love. And it came to how I'm seeking love, and starting to understand the way that I'm reaching out and trying to pull love into me. And a lot of that related around sexuality. So there's a lot of unhealthy patterns that I could see starting to be built up, in terms of sexual desire and sexual partnerships with the worthiness of love, and seeing how that can be transmuted. And then on top of that, like getting into honesty of communication, and how that was a core part of my mother wound, because we all have traumatic childhoods in one way or another. And I found, I love my parents, and I see them for the ways that they were doing the best that they could with who they are. And a big part of this journey has been learning to forgive my parents. And really it's just about forgiving myself and starting to claim that empowerment of who we are, and stepping into our truth about, okay, I'm no longer going to blame, parents for what happened as a child. I'm going to take responsibility, and I'm going to heal it, which is a lot of what I'm doing now with this work. But there was elements that I learned at a very young age, is that I didn't feel like I was getting the love that I needed as a child. And I felt like that love was being withheld for many different ways from my parents. And any time that I would actually speak up as a child, any time that I would kind of voice how I was feeling, especially if it was about how I didn't feel loved by them, or I wasn't getting what I needed from them emotionally or from my emotional body, that love would be taken away even more. So what it was creating was these like patterns of not wanting to be honest, because I was so scared that if I was honest, if I did speak my truth, that the little love that I was getting would be taken away. And when that pattern gets interwoven in who you are, and when that pattern gets interwoven into the ways that I would, communicate with my partners in relationships, I would always somehow have a fear of speaking my truth. I would always somehow have a fear of actually speaking how I felt, because I didn't want the love to be taken away. So I rather be dishonest and keep them happy, or be dishonest and tell a story that wasn't true to them, to kind of keep the dynamics of peace and balance and the relationship alive, instead of just speaking my truth. And all the time when these wounds come up is the paradox, which is, I wouldn't want the love to be taken away, so I wouldn't be honest. with my partners. But the problem is when you're dishonest with your partners, you eventually, that love is going to go because you're lying to them. You're not being truthful with them. And what I've been seeing lately, especially in different partnerships that I've had over the last year, is that kind of starting to conquer this idea of not wanting to be honest. Only good things come from being honest. Like when you start to have the courage to speak your truth and share from your emotional body and your needs and communicate honesty, which it's still very difficult for me to do this. I'm getting these beautiful reflections back now when I'm honest, that it's actually not only received, by the feminine, but it's really honored by my partners, whether it's a serious monogamous relationship or even just a casual thing. It's I need to be honest, and that I'm rewriting this pattern and this belief system around honesty that came from this mother wound. And so what I love about it is, I think a lot of men, their priority in life is getting laid, is sex. It's a biological functioning of who we are. And there's so much shame and there's so much guilt tied into sexuality, but there's a lot of issues around integrity and authenticity and honest communication when it comes to sexuality. And so for me, because sex was so important, it's not that I would lie to get sex, but I would want to make sure that my sexual partners would feel really comfortable and safe with me and happy with me. And I would be so worried that if I was fully honest with how I was feeling, my needs, my desires, where I was, and like all these things, like I was so worried that if I wasn't honest, then that sexual energy wouldn't keep flowing and my partners wouldn't be there. And so like I love taking away this whole idea of sexuality, because now I can just start to create these new relationships, especially with the feminine, around honesty and integrous, authentic communication. And so that's a big part that I can see really going to be coming from this celibacy, is that, yeah, you take out a lot of the idea and the mechanics and the driving force in my body for sex. You take that away. What's left is really then starting to create the patterns of honesty and integrity. And then on top of that, the third pillar, and there's a lot, I'm sure, in my mother wound, but these are the three pillars. The third pillar, of course, is trusting the feminine. And I had a lot of experiences, when I was younger, in ways that I felt like I should have been protected and should have been loved by my mother, but I wasn't. I felt in many ways I was abandoned and betrayed because I wasn't kept safe. I wasn't treated the way that I felt like I should have been treated. My innocence wasn't protected. And when you have these core kind of experiences with your mother, or at least what I did, is it created this idea that I wasn't able to ever trust women because I couldn't trust my mother to keep me safe. And that creates a massive block around your heart. And so what I'd find is it was really easy for me to connect to women sexually because it was like a different energy center. It's like I could just have sex with this woman, fuck this woman, make love to this woman. It was a whole different kind of energy system in me. But when it came to actually opening my heart and to be vulnerable and to trust, there was a massive block around my heart, and in many ways there still is. It's because I've lost that trust of the feminine that occurred when I was growing up, that the imprint of the first woman who's supposed to keep you safe and protect you, of a woman who's supposed to exemplify love, both giving me love and for me to love, I didn't trust, and I was always suspicious of and on guard. That's where that defense mechanism came from. So I'd always have this inherent distrust of women and this inherent distrust of my partners, that at some point they're going to betray me or hurt me. And so you stay blocked off. And then in that, the ego can do all sorts of things, wreak all sorts of havoc, of projecting and blaming and pointing the finger, when really it's my own block that's stopping me from creating these healthy relationship dynamics. So again, like taking out the idea of sex and the ways that sex with my partners or with women, with the feminine, was in many ways continuously like fueling my feeling good and connecting with women, while getting to ignore the idea of a heart connection, or the ways that my heart has been blocked. This is going to allow me then to have to face that, to have to feel that, and then to have this new, really beautiful relationship with the feminine that's based on learning how to trust again and learning how to open my heart again, and not using the bypass mechanisms of sex or sexuality to distract myself from doing that. So that's going to be really powerful for me. Like, I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, and it feels in many ways like scary and confusing and difficult, but I love the idea that, again, it's like taking away these elements of where we bypass and where we distract ourselves from. We tell ourselves stories, or we just seek the pleasurable and ignore the painful. then I can really dive into, into the mother wound. And for me, one of the big parts too is that I've been feeling just, really sad for a while now, that, my heart is longing, for connection. My heart is longing for a container, a divine relationship. And, the times that I've been trying to seek that, especially over the last 6 months, has always in some ways been sabotaged, me sabotaging it, because I haven't fully healed these parts of me. I haven't fully healed these parts of me, and my infinite gratitude and honor and appreciation, for the women that I've been connecting with over the last year or so, who have been really helping me see it and really helping me feel it, as well as weathering a whole bunch of my shit that comes out in relationships, because they come from these wounded places that haven't been healed yet. But my heart is really longing to be met and to create that divine sacred container of union. And as much as my heart is longing for it, and I feel my entire being like wanting to pull it in, almost to the point where I just want to cry because I don't have it, it's good for me now to have this celibacy break, because then I have to heal these parts of myself that even if my future divine partner came in right now, I wouldn't be ready, because eventually these things would come up, these things would surface. And I want to do the work so that when she does show up, when divine timing aligns and that, my next divine partner and container comes up, is that it won't be then a relationship where I have to work this stuff out and have to project this stuff and have the ways that it wants to self-sabotage. I'll have the space that is created within my heart where I went back and healed my mother wound, healed these patterns, healed these ways that, I've been shut down in relationships, the blocks around my heart, the ways I haven't trusted, and the ability to communicate honestly, to share my feelings, like all these things that have been wrapped up in these mother wounds that eventually come out in relationships. What I love is that to take this time for the 6 months of celibacy, you then have to sit in that fire. You have to sit in that fire and actually face these things and recode these things and really just love yourself. Love yourself in ways that maybe you haven't loved before. And I think so many people have issues and fears around being alone. We don't know how to be with ourselves anymore. When we're alone, we feel lonely, when the truth is that, there's no better company than ourselves. But so many of our patterns come up, when we're by ourselves, that we like to distract ourselves with connections. And so this celibacy period is just like, you have to then sit in your fires. And it was so easy for me to bypass and to distract through sex and sexuality, that, yeah, I'm really excited now to keep sitting in these fires and to keep being committed to what I really want, which is true partnership, which is healthy partnership with it, which is a divine container where, each partner is coming in a sovereign way. And then instead of being codependent, instead of it being a container where all this dark stuff and unresolved wounding comes out to be transmuted in a very karmic way, it's a partnership where both people can come in as sovereign as they possibly can be, because no one's perfect. But then you get to grow together. You get to love together. You get to shine your light together. And then on top of all that, you have the idea that, we have, or at least I feel, my future children getting ready to come in. And for the last year, or I mean, to be honest, for the last 10 years, I've been excited to be a father. But, really within the last year and 6 months, I've created this beautiful relationship to the souls, to the spirits of my future children. I literally feel them really close. I feel them around me. I feel them cheering me on. I feel them so happy. Even that I'm deciding to do this 6-month celibacy, I can feel how excited they are, because they know that by me doing this, by me committing to this time of celibacy, is that I'm going to be doing some pretty deep work and healing myself, which is ultimately going to allow me to be a better father. Because I'll be healing my own inner child. And so much of the mother wound is tied into our inner children. And so what I feel my future children communicating to me is that they're so excited for me to be their father. But what they want more than anything right now is for me to be a good dad to my own inner child, for me to be a good, to be in a good relationship with my own inner child, my little Oliver. Because once I'm in a good relationship with my inner child, that will be in many ways one of the biggest gateways that will allow me to step up and to be a good father to them. So I can feel them kind of cheering me on. I can feel them really celebrating the fact that I'm starting to dive in more and more into the shadow realms, into the shadow work, into the pain work, where a few people want to go. And to create this beautiful new healing template, a new relationship through sexuality, through my mother wound, with my inner children, and so that when that partner shows up for me, and the time is right to become a sacred father, is that I will have gone through this, and I'll be able to stand as a beautiful example to them of what it's like when you do this healing, and then to keep sharing in this way as a way, I think, to inspire other men, because I know I wish I would have heard more men kind of talking about some of these things in the last few years of my life, especially I wish when I was much younger, in my early 20s even. But I wish I had access to more men speaking about this kind of stuff, because it would have helped me greatly in the ways that I dealt with my patterns and the ways that I dealt with my wounding. And certainly I wouldn't have hurt so many of my past partners if I had, an awareness of what was going on and the ways these wounds kind of express themselves in partnerships. So I really love sharing about this stuff for men, to tune in with and to be aware. And then also maybe for some of you beautiful women out there, if you're in partnership with a man, to maybe to have an idea of why some of these patterns in him come out, and for you to be able to hold that space for him, and for you to be able to feel, what can happen when men start to focus on ourselves, so that these wounds don't come up and sabotage relationships, or they don't lash out at our partners. Yeah. And there's still a big part of me that thinks this is a mistake. Thinks this is like, what am I doing? I can't remember the last time. I think I even went a month without sex, let alone 6 months without sex, or 6 months even without ejaculation. I hope I make it. I hope I don't explode or something. But that's the beauty of, as we push ourselves into these new dimensions of who we are, as we push ourselves into these new avenues of growth, we're able then to find treasure in our beings like we've never found before. And that treasure carries with it, true growth and true potential and true transformation. And, for me, the idea of going through preconception cleansing, which is something that I love, teaching men about, and for I think the masculine to be aware of what goes on, or what can happen as we step up to be a father, whether we're already fathers now or we're thinking about becoming one soon, is that, yeah, it's all about that right relationship with ourselves and our right relationship with our inner children. And I think this is what this 6 months of celibacy is really, it's the part that's most exciting for me, is that I know if I can get through this 6 months, how much closer I'll be to the partner that I want to be, and more specifically the father that I want to be. And yeah, I'm really excited for that. Scared, nervous, have no idea what's coming, but yeah, I'm feeling really excited for that, and how grateful I am for this beautiful new moon, this beautiful eclipse energy that came in, and is literally, you can feel it. It's like the dark light of the new moon can shine within us all these beautiful parts of ourselves that maybe we can't see. And because it's Cancer, it's like you can feel the emotional body awareness that's coming. So for all of you out there who may be having a difficult time with this new moon and don't know how to channel the energy, just cry. That's like my biggest advice, is just feel the parts of you that are really hurting, feel the parts of you that really need to be felt, and just cry. Let those tears fall. And when you let those tears fall, when you let this emotional body purge and cleanse come out, such beautiful areas of your life will start to open up. Such beautiful parts of your life will then start to be known and felt. And we have to be gentle with this, because in many ways we're starting to come into contact and love places in ourselves that we've never loved, never seen, maybe even have been at war with for a very long time. And so we're creating a more whole relationship with who we are. And I know, without the distractions of sex, so to speak, I'll then have to start, from a heart place, making love with myself, and really, really making more love in myself, and making the love more real in myself, and to be making that love more potent in myself. And so many beautiful things are going to come about, you know, as more love flows through who I am. And it's like, how deeply can I love myself, and how deeply can that love transform and heal me, and how ready am I to face the wounds in me that have hurt for so long, that I know now, thanks to this new moon, are so ready to move, because I'm not willing to tolerate it anymore. Like, all the parts of myself that are moving forward into my future, into my destiny, are no longer willing to allow me to ignore these parts that I've been ignoring for so long, or that I've been bypassing for so long through sex or through sexuality. Oh, yeah. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for receiving this. Thank you guys for allowing me to share a lot of this. You know, I'm sure a lot of people were wondering, you know, why I shared this. And again, it's because I know I could maybe make this pact to myself and not follow through with it. Maybe I could even ignore it, or pretend I didn't really mean it. But I love kind of coming onto the Facebook world and having these kind of declarations, because then I'm held accountable. Then there's no going back. There's no taking it back. There's no changing my mind, you know. So thank you guys for receiving this, and in many ways for helping to hold me accountable as I transmit this and share these processes and this process to all of you. And I'm sure this will definitely bring about some beautiful new sharings as I go through this process, and what gets to come up. Yeah, I love you guys. Yeah, and I hope you take this new moon energy and this eclipse energy, and regardless of what choices you're making and commitments you're deciding are best for you, is that you make the choices and the commitments that really are going to further your evolution, and for you to allow these parts of yourself to be loved. Yeah. So, love you guys. Excited to hear more from you. I haven't had a chance to necessarily read all your comments yet. But yeah, I'll read through, and if anyone has any questions or any sharings, or yeah, if anyone's watching this and you've been going through your own kind of period of celibacy or sexual energy cleansing and clearing, you know, feel free to share your experiences on here, because I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear about them and to know more about it, and I would love to know more about it. So I love you guys. Sending you a big giant hug from here at these sacred lands of Avalon, the heart chakra of the planet. And yeah, may we all come more into right alignment with ourselves in our hearts, and may the healing be done.